Petrus. Today. You. But first, some other stuff.
My, what a brilliant ember you have there.
That's quite nice.
I've only heard legends of such specimens.
My specimens are legendary.
Embers used for the secret rites of divine blacksmith.
I'll say.
Perhaps you could lend it to me.
Well,
I've long dreamed of forging divine weapons.
well, that's certainly not divine. But not now.
I see. 'Tis a pity. I can't expect you to give up what's yours.
Well, you gotta ask nicely, Andre. You gotta ask nicely.
I see.
Indeed. Alright, so Andre wants my divine specimen splashed all over his face so his big blacksmith can take... I'm taking that a bit too far. But, take a briefly look at these other embers that I've collected. I can't remember where to give all of them, but they're like magic and enchanted, so who cares? Anyways, large divine ember. Ember required for weapon ascension, blah blah blah. A secret church rite, intended for select divine blacksmiths. So, not too much to go on there, just... only the most selective divine blacksmiths could possibly handle my specimens. Is that you, Andre? That's the same goddamn thing.
Perhaps I've not.
Yes, yes. You can have my... just open your mouth.
Splendid. Splendid. Thank you.
That's right.
Andre of Astora never disappoints. I assure you.
So, I just want to point out that it is interesting that Andre is a divine blacksmith. I'm sure that really that's just more of a gameplay convention. Here, I'm upgrading some shit. I'm sure it's more of a gameplay convention in the sense that you need someone. The game is laid out pretty well in the sense of, say, if you want to go a specific build path, and this was a bug where he just talks at nothing. If you want to go a specific build path, like say if you're starting out with a faith build, a good place to go would be the Moonlight Butterfly, kill that off and get your Divine Ember. Come back to Andre, get a Divine Weapon so that you can go down to the tombs, or excuse me, the Catacombs, and then get the Rite of Kindling, and then go a little bit into the tomb to be able to get the second Divine Ember if you really want it. But more importantly, rescue Rhea and all that shit, so that you can get early access to a lot more miracles. That way you don't have to wait until later in the game. That's a good path. Anyways, as far as he goes, it is interesting that he's a Divine Blacksmith. Nothing there, buddy. Nothing's there as the barrels fade into the wall. He does seem to have a close connection with the church, though, so that's one thing that's pretty interesting. In regards to him and the other blacksmiths that look exactly like him, though, they might have some association sort of loosely with the occult, which I'll get more into later today. And here with Keith, we're finishing off this covenant that I had joined to get all his shit. I just want you to remember his motivations.
They failed, every last one of them. They were strong, but saw not the truth. I am certain that you will prove different.
Just remember his words there. It's not going to come up much in this episode, but I want to make sure that this stays pretty fresh in your minds. As far as, because he is like a central player of the entire universe. And here we're going to go into Nito's Covenant and try to get that done off screen today. Because obviously we're going to have to kill Nito today. And in regards to Nito's Covenant, the Grave Lord's servants, it's pretty weird that they are sort of associated with phantoms. Like, the way that this works is that you join his covenant and you use Eyes of Death to basically plant stronger versions of enemies only in New Game Plus. This is one of the reasons why the covenant didn't work particularly well. And, you know, you can harass other players without actually getting to see it, which is another problem with it. But more importantly, what I'm trying to get at is it's associated with phantoms, and Nito apparently has this power to just make stronger enemies in areas for some reason. My question to you is, why the hell would Nito want any of that? Why would it matter to Nito? You'd say something, some half-assed explanation like, well, if Nito kills people, he can get their skeletons, and he likes skeletons. That's fucking stupid. Here's kind of the problem with this. One is that he's harassing the undead, like us. He's harassing other players. And he's using other undead in the process, so this would net him absolutely nothing. note that the Gravelord sword, you get this by joining, and you get the one of his miracles. I'll talk more about those in a bit. So that is really strange that he's even doing it in the first place, because he's not gaining anything. Like, if they... I mean, sure, things are kind of technically dying and just reviving it over and over and again. And maybe that's it. Maybe he just loves the fact that undead can die and then come back over and over again. Maybe that somehow pleases him or gives him more power. Why he needs more power to just sit here doing nothing, I don't know. But what I'm getting at anyways is, in regards to Nito, he seems to have the least thought put into him. Like, he just exists. And here we get the Gravelord Great Sword Dance. Just a slightly upgraded version of the one that you get initially. It only takes 10 Eyes of Death, so it's pretty easy to just go farm Basilisks. And here we have Solaire. Pay attention to his dialogue.
Oh, hello there. Forgive me. I was just pondering about my poor fortune. I did not find my own son, not in Anor Londo, nor in Twilight Black.
Weird places to go.
Where else might my son be? Lost Izalith? Or the tomb of the Gravelord? But I cannot give up. I became undead to pursue this. But when I peer at the sun up above, it occurs to me, what if I am seen as a laughingstock? As a blind fool without reason? Well, I suppose they wouldn't be far off.
This is very important. I want to go into a lot in regards to his actual character, but that's probably going to come later on.
Oh, hello.
Don't really have too much time to deal with him right now. I just wanted to make sure that you paid attention to that, just to show that his humanity, his motivations are really beginning to show now. I don't really think he's going insane so much as... And he's not going hollow. He's definitely not going hollow. But it is showing exactly what's important to him as he stands next to this broken altar, which I've showed you in the past what exactly that looks like. But we'll leave him to his own devices and go about our own business for the time being. But yeah, just to bookend what I was saying about Nito, it is interesting that he has all these associations, and especially his abilities are miracles. Like the Witch of Izalith has pyromancy. You know, Seath is associated with sorcery now, even though the Witch of Izalith is really more the sorcery one, as far as the witches go. The gods are associated with miracles. The Dark Soul isn't really associated with anything, and won't be until the DLC, I suppose. But it is interesting that Nito just, you know, is just associated with just miracles. He's just kind of lumped in with the gods, even though it doesn't really make any sense. He doesn't have his own thing. It's just miracles, sorcery, pyromancy, and then some more miracles. And here I came down here, I'll have to explain this, but mashing the talk button with him does not work. This is kind of a bug. I think he is supposed to show back up down here, but he would not respond to my comments, and I did not take kindly to that. And I'll go ahead and tell you, I accidentally killed him in the process of trying to kick him out here and lock the door behind him so that he couldn't stroll his way back in here. But it was worth it. It was worth it. I loved every moment of it. I'll do it all again. In regards to Solaire, one last thing in regards to him. I just want to make sure that you realize what he's after. And, you know, he wants his own son, but what does that entail exactly? Again, we'll be going more into that later on. But he is still searching. He went to Blighttown for some reason, first off the bat. Like, he went to Anor Londo, I can understand. Oh, he's looking for a son. Of course he would go to Anor Londo. But Blighttown? Why would you go to Blighttown looking for that? And we never actually saw him in Blighttown. So that's probably a bit of just cut dialogue or something. Or it used to be something, and now it's nothing. Who knows?
Curses, you leave me no choice. You aren't yourself anymore. Forgive me.
Watch this. He seems to run out.
Look at this.
So he does get dialogue once I start beating the shit out of him. And he drops a Sorcery Hush and Slumbering Dragon Crest Ring. And that, of course, is because of his association with spooks, or his association with the corpse of a spook that we found in here. Weird that he ran out of cast, though. Okay, first off, I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted this. But I'm pretty sure I actually mentioned this in the prior part, but since I was going hollow, or whatever the hell was going on with me in the prior part, I kind of just barely skimmed on this, but this is most likely from Rhea and the crew's little initial expedition. They stopped, set up camp, and then left. And that's probably what these are for. Not the remnants of an ancient bonfire or anything like that. This is random speculation. I guess it could be. It could be. But I just wanted to make sure that that was absolutely clear. Now, that we are done with this, I wanted to make sure that I showed you my little run, my blind run that I usually do, in regards to how I usually go through this area. Gotta be careful, though. Don't want these skeleton men to actually hit you, because that would be bad. But fall down here, you will take damage, obviously. But you fall down right there, and make sure you don't get hit by that guy. And you land where the humanity used to be. Then you just go down the ladder and you're done. Well, you don't have to even go down the ladder. You can just drop off the edge here. And that's the easiest way to go about handling that. I love how whenever you sit down at the bonfire, if an enemy is there... Of course, the bonfire is supposed to shut off if an enemy is that close. But he didn't get there quite in time. So I guess the enemy kind of plops down and is like, oh, he's sitting, I can't do anything. Oh. And he just leaves. What a poor guy. Anyways. I think he doesn't say anything of merit.
I did you wrong.
What? These
Yes.
You know what I mean, don't you?
So he'll be here until we actually defeat Nito. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. Let's see. There's a few things to go over my notes. I'll say that for a second, I guess. This is the worst part of this run if you're doing this, if you're just blindly running through, because that guy can hit you pretty hard. There would be that fog gate right here. Just keep right on going. Just keep right on trucking. There's a Black Knight over here as well. Of course, he's dead now. So that's another thing that you would have to worry about. Just keep right on dropping through. Keep right on trucking. Till you get to the edge here. Again, I've showed this, but just get to the edge. Fall off here. And then you can fall off pretty safely right there. Although, since I'm wearing quite a bit of armor right now, that's going to hurt quite a bit, so I might as well just go ahead and heal. Not going to matter too much, because right now I'm not actually trying to get over to Nito. I'm actually trying to get this guy to spawn. Actually, let's just go ahead and handle my crystal lizard fetish here. God damn it, I hate that. Always manages to pull that off. But Leroy is supposed to show up here. Where the hell is he? Leroy. Paladin Leroy, who we encountered whenever we were doing the pinwheel fight. I'm not hollow, am I? I'm not hollow. Oh, I am hollow. How the hell? Oh, I rolled back. That's right. I forgot about that. I rolled back and then I never made myself unhollow. Well, let's stop recording for a moment and take care of that shit. Let's just forget that ever happened, shall we? But before I proceed, I wanted to point this out. Someone said that... God damn it. Don't you dare push me over the edge. I'm not going to stop recording 2 times. Get out of here. You naughty, naughty piece of... But someone pointed this out. But the little blue things that show up all over the place whenever you use the skull lantern, they claimed at least that this does not work with castlight or the sunlit maggots, which I don't know if it's true. I guess I'll test it out one day, but it won't be today. Just wanted to point that out. A few things in regards to note-keeping. Let's see. I wanted to point out... Chewy and Fuckface, that's what it was. Chewy and Fuckface. I could not remember because I was going completely hollow. Once I actually managed to get, like, some sugar into my system, I probably have all sorts of diabetes. Once I did that, then I remembered it. Back in part 5, I referred to Nico and Vince as Nico the Nitwit and Nitwit and Vince the Dick. Not quite as clever as I remembered it being, but that's okay. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that Cranky and Bob have both made their own cartoons. In regards to me, I guess, is one way of putting it. Cranky obviously has made more cartoons. Huh. Not there. That's weird. Anyways. Paladin Leroy. And I wanted to make sure that I direct you to that. I'll link those in the description down there. Here we have Paladin Leroy. It's kind of unusual that he is after us. Remember, he helped us with defeating Pinwheel. And he nearly one-shotted the poor fellow. And he does do some split damage. And he does use miracles. Okay. Bloodborne has given me a lot of bad habits in regards to rolling all the time. Because I'm so used to B solving every single problem. Which I actually detest, but anyways, not gonna start complaining about Bloodborne. But Paladin Leroy is now quote-unquote dead. Although, since he is an undead, so he can't be dead in the first place, and we're going to learn he's undead in the second. And, also, since he's invading our world, he can't really die here. It's kind of unclear how that even works, but don't worry about it. I'm sure it's nothing. I'm sure that it's nothing. Go ahead and pick up our humanity that he drops. I always forget about that mechanic. It's just, if you defeat an invader, you actually get humanity. It's one of those things. I never remember it. But he drops some humanity, not important. And Grant and Sanctus. Now, Grant and Sanctus, let's take a look at those two. There's actually a lot to look at because I've added a few things into my inventory. But let's try to focus here for a moment. Sanctus's passive effect is it causes a little bit of regeneration over time, which can be kind of useful on very, very specific builds. Not really useful so much as, like, if, say, you are assisting other people, if you're a faith-based user, and you're using, like, a healing skills or something, and you make a career out of helping other people in their own worlds, since you can't heal on your own without using humanity, you can use Sanctus, and that will give you a little bit of healing over time. But barely anything. It's not really even worth it. Anyways, Sanctus, a legendary weapon. It's not really a weapon, but whatever. I guess it kind of is. Other Way of the White, granted to an undead paladin long ago. So, Leroy is undead. Once blessed with the protection of a white flame. What? Once blessed with the protection of a white flame. What? But its power has all but faded, so that it provides only slight health point recovery. Oh, well. The legend of its health point recovery has been diminished. But apparently it used to be protected with a white flame. So maybe at some point in history it had the appearance of being on fire all the time? I don't know what the hell they're even talking about. But that's just their way of saying, you know what, this thing used to be their ongoing theme of things used to be good, but now they suck ass. That's just what that is. I guess that's their kind of half-assed way of trying to rationalize why it heals over time, but it's almost completely worthless. I cheated some things into the game to be able to show them off, because I'll say it this way. I used all the ball souls, went back to Anor Londo, and upgraded those into some boss weapons. But some of those you can actually get 2 weapons from them, so I would have to go into New Game Plus to be able to get them. To get all of them, which I'm not going to do, obviously. So I went ahead and just cheated those in to show them off. I might as well, I guess, show off a couple of these. Let's see, what did I cheat in? I cheated in the Dragon Fist, the Great Lord, Great Sword, Smoke's Hammer, since you can't get that without beating them a second time, and all the Blacksmith Hammers, although I could get the Blacksmith Hammers right away, but I didn't want to go around murdering everyone like that. So this is the Dragon Bone Fist. It's just It's just a big dragon bone that you put your fist in. That's pretty much it. You punch people with it. It's cute. But that's pretty much it. It has this little R2 move where you do a huge uppercut. It's just one of these little cute weapons that's here for the sake of novelty. Sort of like the... It's not quite as bad in Bloodborne, but sort of like the stake driver, I guess, would be a good example of it in Bloodborne. I don't know about Demon Souls. And Dark Souls 2, of course, there's so many weapons that are utterly ridiculous in the first place that I guess you could just take your pick in regards to that. Let's see. The Moonlight Butterfly Horn. I got this. This is one of the boss soul weapons. Kind of standard fare in regards to that. Actually, I do need to read out their descriptions. I need to forget about that. Oh, Lord, this is turning into a clusterfuck because of all this. Dragonbone Fist, a weapon from the soul of the Iron Golem, that's where this came from. Guardian of Sense Fortress, who repelled countless heroes who sought Anor Londo. The gods fused the power of the soul with the great bones of the dragons, forming an appropriate core for the giant golem. So we finally get an explanation for what the hell the soul was talking about. It said that the soul used to be the bone of a great dragon. But here it says the gods fused the power of the soul with the great bones of the dragons, forming an appropriate core for the giant golem. So where exactly they got the soul in the first place, whether it used to be a human being, I don't know. Whether it used to be God, I don't know. But apparently all the Dragonbone is actually doing is just acting as a container. It's sort of like living flesh in a way. Which is pretty strange. It sort of insinuates that the bone itself of a dragon inside of them is not the kind of same stone material as what's outside of their bodies. Which might not be the case with Seath, because as I pointed out a couple parts back, that he seems to be inverted and that his insides are where his exterior should be. Okay, and the Moonlight Butterfly Horn, weapon born from the mystical creature of the Darkroot Garden, the Moonlight Butterfly, which we saw tons of in Seath's little shit cave, which I guess I should have killed one of those, but it's just the same thing. They dropped some I don't even give a shit. You can farm those for blue slabs if you really want to. The horns of the butterfly, a being created by Seath, are imbued with a pure magic power. So nothing really of merit there as far as descriptions go. Kind of unfortunate. Smoke's hammer, great hammer from the soul of Executioner Smoke, who guards the cathedral in the forsaken city of Anor Londo. Smoke loved his work and ground the bones of his victims into his own feed. Weird way of saying it. It's almost like he's an animal. He has his own feed. Like he has a little feed sack that he wears on his head like a horse. And he just puts in human remains in there. Ruining his hopes of being ranked with the Four Knights. So despite him hanging out with Ornstein, he's not one of the Four Great Knights. And he's not one of the Four Great Knights despite being just as strong as they are. Because of the fact that he keeps eating the humans. Stop eating humans, Smoke. Why exactly this is such a big problem with the gods, I guess really don't have a straight answer. But I would imagine it would have something to do with the fact that he's taking so much humanity into his own body that he is, I guess, as far as they're concerned, slowly becoming more human than he is a god. You know, not necessarily in terms of behavior or anything like that, but it's just he's being tainted, I guess is their way of looking at it. Grant, a legendary weapon of the Way of the White, which we just got from Leroy. Granted to an undead paladin long ago, this massive iron can only be lifted by those with inhuman strength, but it is blessed and very effective against agents of dark. So, Leroy, what the hell was he doing? He apparently, from the description here, it seems to be insinuating that he is aligned with the Church, of course, since he's a member of the Way of the White, which is an extension of the Church of Thurland. And he is, chasing down, quote-unquote, agents of dark. Now, what the hell are agents of dark? Well, it's not just humans. Humans aren't necessarily just agents of dark. Who would be the agents of dark? I would assume, if looking at all the possible things that it could be, I would say it's most likely members of the occult. And you remember, we found an occult shield up there before. And I will go more into that in a second, but hold on, let's go over some more things, just for the hell of it. Might as well go over the various hammers. Metal Hammer of Amos, a skeleton blacksmith deep within the Catacombs who rarely speaks. Can be used as a strike weapon, but better left in the hands of its talented owner. All the the hammers of the smiths have that same description. Metal Hammer of Andre of Astoria, Blacksmith, blah, blah, blah. These don't really have any significance at all. And there's one last one up here. The Reinforced Giant Hammer. This is what you get from the Giant Blacksmith when you kill him. Wooden Hammer, the Giant Blacksmith in Orlando who handles lightning weapons. This one actually does have something. The Giant Blacksmith forges with its wooden hammer, as it would be hazardous to handle lightning weapons with metals. I don't think that that's how that actually works. Maybe it would make more sense if it was made out of, like, the wood from one of the arch trees or something. That would actually make more sense, and I will briefly show off how big and stupid this weapon is. As far as scaling and everything goes, this is actually a pretty useful weapon, just in terms of damage and reach and things. But it has that dumb Monster Hunter-esque... Especially Dark Souls 2 does this in spades. Too fucking big, too stupid, makes no sense at all. I know it's from the Giant Blacksmith, so that's the reason why it's so huge, but it's just too ridiculous. I really cannot stand to use it. It's one of those things. It doesn't matter how good a weapon is. If it's too ridiculous, I cannot bring myself to even bother even looking at the damn thing. But I might use it a little bit just to show it off. Gravelord Sword, this is the thing that we got in the little opening whenever I was showing all the shit. Sword wielded only by servants of Great Lord Nito, the first of the dead, crafted from the bones of the fallen. So apparently these are just random guys. The miasma of death exudes from the sword, a veritable toxin to any living being. Whatever. But this is the thing that Great Lord Nito is using in the opening cinematic. I guess the servants of Nito cobble together bones of dead and just pile them together until it somehow makes a bladed weapon? Don't ask me how that, just don't worry about it. It's a bone sword, that's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. And I can't remember if I actually got this earlier or not. I don't think I did, though. Quelaag's Fury Sword, a curved sword born from the soul of Quelaag, daughter of the Witch of Izalith, who was transformed into a Chaos Demon. Like Quelaag's body, the sword features shells, spikes, and a coating of Chaos Fire. Power affected by Wilder's humanity. I don't even remember that. Does it scale with humanity? I guess it does. It says so. Anyways, nothing much to go on here. Anytime that I pick up something and it has something like this where it just says something like, does fire damage, it drives me crazy just because it's not adding anything to the game. Like, why do you even bother having a description if the only thing you're going to say is, it came from this thing and it deals da-da-da? Anyways. I guess she turned into a Chaos Demon, which this might be the only time... I don't know. It's pretty well known, so maybe this is the only time where you actually get a straight-up, clear-cut description of, yeah, she turned into a Chaos Demon. But she didn't always look this way. She used to be a normal witch. You know, what are the hot-ass witches who are all females? So how does that work? Maybe they need to track down human men to take care of their shortage of, like, Saiyan women. Yes, I'm kind of starting to like witches a little bit more now. Oh, well, we'll worry more about all the sexy implications of being a witch later on. Anyways, nothing to go on in regards to that. And there's a couple more things I want to go over, and then we'll finally be done, I promise. Great Lord Greatsword, this is what you get from beating the final boss, so I guess spoilers, but if you're watching this, you've already beaten the game multiple times. I've warned you about this before. Greatsword born from the soul of Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. He's not the Lord of Flame anymore, he's not the Lord of Sunlight or anything, he's the Lord of Cinder. I guess it's kind of funny that I guess the other gods were like, nah, fuck him now. I don't know. It's kind of weird that his title changed. As bearer of the Ultimate Soul, I guess it's considered to be the Ultimate Soul because, it's, you know, if the first flame has a lot of flame going on, then I guess it produces a lot of light, so that's what makes it the Ultimate Soul? I don't know. Gwyn wielded the bolts of the sun, but before linking the fire, divided that power amongst his children, and set off with only this great sword as his companion. So, Gwyn's power has been greatly diminished. I wonder if he had actually gone into the kiln with his full power intact, if the Age of Fire actually would have lasted a little bit longer. I guess he knew that eventually he was going to burn out either way, so he considered it to be more important to actually spread out his power amongst his servants and the other gods to ensure that they could survive the next 1,000 years. Excuse me. I've been talking too much. Dark Sword, this is what we got from doing the case shit. Sorry, my voice is going out very quickly. The Sword of the Knights of the Four Kings of New Londo. Its blade is wide and thick. Oh, it's too early in the morning for me to be this perverse. And it is wielded in an unusual manner. When the Four Kings were seduced by evil, this is, you're not helping me out, description. Its blade is wide and thick, and it is wielded in an unusual manner. When the Four Kings were seduced by evil, their knights became dark race. Servants of the dark who... servants of the dark, I guess you can misconstrue that too. Who wielded these dark swords. Like black men's penises. Oh yeah. But it is wielded unusual. Not really that unusual. It's more just as R2 does this little thing. Again, never, if you ever see someone in a movie, if you're ever wondering, is this actual sword combat? Anytime that you see someone in a movie swing a sword and do a full 360, it's not real sword combat. Because that is the, again, as I said before, that is the stupidest thing you could ever do in a real fight. Although, if you're being hit by, like, something from the side, and you're trying to regain your balance, and you need to turn a 360 and sort of back pivot step, like do a back step while also spinning to be able to reorient yourself, that's fine. You know, just whatever you need to do to be able to maintain something like that. But anyways, normally, yeah, it's just kind of stupid. Nothing else in regards to this. R2 is kind of the same with a two-handed attack. Oh, there's so much to show! Fuck me! I guess I'll briefly show the, let's see, what would be interesting? The Great Lord Greatsword would probably be interesting to show off that briefly, and I don't think anything else. Quelags does the fire effect, I'll show that in a second. But this has kind of the standard Greatsword. The only thing that really changes is R2. And that's the reason why I really don't use this weapon. Is because a lot of the Dark Souls 1 weapons, and I guess Demon Souls 2, although Demon Souls had hyper armor, or super armor, so that kind of solved that problem. Dark Souls doesn't really have that exactly. But this move, it does flatten enemies that walk into it, but it's so slow that it's really just not really useful for actual combat. I mean, you can pull an enemy, like shoot an arrow at them, or just, you know, aggro them and get their attention, and as they run towards you, you start the animation and then flatten them. But really, this just, yeah, it's just kind of showing off for the sake of showing off. It's just a cute move. Not really that important. Quelaag's Fury Sword is unusual in that it does sort of this native fire damage and has this fire effect whenever you actually use it. But that's pretty much it. It's a pretty good weapon, actually. It's pretty good scaling. It's good for it's very good for early game. The Gravelord Sword, as a curved sword, it does have kind of the standard moveset. It does have this unique R2, though, which is kind of useful. Although the damage scaling on this is so terrible that it's, even as an early game weapon, it's not particularly useful. And I think that might be it in regards to all this. Actually, let's use one of the new weapons, I guess. Now let's go ahead and use the dumb giant blacksmith hammer for the time being. Alright, now I guess I'll just walk my way back up here. Alright, but that's all that. I'm sorry, guys, if that irritated you. But I wanted to make sure I went over all the lore significance of everything, just in case. And I wanted to make sure that I showed off everything. And I probably even missed a couple of weapons. But we'll worry about that later on. Did that. What else to go on in my notes? There's a lot to go over in terms of... There was a lot that I could have said in the prior part in regards to the lore of this area. But, you know, I was just completely out of it. So I guess there's no helping it. Let's see. I already went over the bonfire being Ray's expedition. Something I wanted to point out in regards to the giant skeleton men up here. Wait, did I just go the wrong path? No, it's fine. It's fine. There is sort of a convention there in Japanese mythology, and I have no idea if this is linked to it at all. But it's something in my own little research I found out myself. But there is something called, let's see if I can mess this up, Gashadokuro. There's sort of a monster called, and that literally means starving skeletons. But they are giant skeletons in Japanese mythology that are formed from the amassed bones of unburied people who died of starvation. So maybe that's what the giant skeletons are actually referencing. Maybe. They do have the... Apparently, the Gashodokuros have the power of invisibility and can typically emerge at night. So that's that. I just wanted to make sure that I brought that up. And let's see, do I have anything else I need to do? Yes, that's what I wanted to do. Okay. How damn it, how am I gonna do that? Shit. Shit. Easiest way to do that? I'll just have to go to the Firelink Shrine, because there's not one in the Catacombs. There's not a bonfire to warp to in the Catacombs. That really irritates me. As far as I can remember. There is one at the midpoint, but it's not really set up for it. Anyways, I'm going to run down there because I want to go into Nito's boss room via the coffin one last time. And then we'll go back up for some unspecified enjoyment. And then after that, we'll actually go on to Nito proper. And that should occupy all the rest of this part. But as far as the actual giants, I kind of just barely went into this. But the two possibilities that the giants could be either some sort of race on their own, or they could be human beings that have been instilled with so much humanity that they got really big. It is very unusual that they could imply to be a completely separate race. Because as we know, all of the sort of pygmy-based creatures are extensions of various Lord Souls. You know, the witches, the human beings, and gods. So what exactly would the giants be if they were their own race? They can't really be anything. So that makes no real sense. So you would think that they would have to be either gods or human beings. So I kind of just assume that they are actually just straight up just humans. Because it just makes it so much easier to worry about what the hell they are. I love doing that. If you rotate around them just the right way, then you can get them to spin off into oblivion whenever they're doing that. Okay, make sure I drop down carefully here. And go this way. Alright, but I also wanted to raise the question of why do you think that the giants have their own tomb right next to Nito? Like, we have these. These are the normal, sort of, ordinary human tombs. Where, you know, they apparently store possibly things like we went down here way back in one of the earlier parts. And I pointed out that that might have been like the mother of Guinevere and Gwendolyn down there. You know, maybe. It's like a stretch, but that was one possibility. So maybe there are gods interred down here as well. I stepped on a little guy's head. A little floating guy's head. That's pretty neat. But, sorry, I got sidetracked by the oddity of stepping on this thing's head. But all the humans and gods are interred down here. So why exactly is it whenever you get closer down to Nito, then all of a sudden, oh, it's the Tomb of the Giants, and there's actually coffins laid down specifically for those giant-ass giants to be down there in the first place. You would think that if they were close to Nito, then it would be something that they were there in very ancient times. You know, it was something that happened very early on in history. But I wanted to point out, since we find occult gear down there, and let's actually, if I can, nah, it won't let me, god damn it. But the description of the occult shield would be a good lead into this. But I guess I'll bring that up in a second. But in regards to Leroy, I just wanted to say about him, some people kind of assume that he, I think Marcus even says this, although Marcus kind of makes up things and then says them as facts sometimes, that Leroy might be associated with Nito. Like, maybe he's serving him in some capacity. Was it him? I don't know. I don't want to put words in Marcus's mouth, but I think that's where it came from. Because why would he be actually defending the entrance to Nito or something? Which maybe that has something to do with it. Actually, what I think is that Leroy is assuming, or he's invading that specific location because that's where all the occult shit was going down. And remember, he hunts down servants of the dark. This, you know, what he does, that's his job. The dark armor looks pretty neat. I tend to not like using set armor pieces, like I'm using Havel's gauntlets here just because. A lot of people use Havel's gauntlets because it's like the least offensive part of Havel's gear that actually gives all the massive benefits that his armor has without looking too stupid. So it is kind of irritating, but it kind of suits this armor pretty well. And the lower part, I'm pretty sure, is the Black Iron leggings. Anyways. now that we have slaughtered Leroy, we can go down here and we can pluck... You can do this after the boss fight with Nito, but I wanted to make sure that you're aware that you can go down here early on and finish off Leroy without actually having to worry about any of that. And just pillage his corpse this way. But anytime that you beat Leroy, his corpse, even though he's undead, again, don't worry about it, shows up down here for some reason. Paladin helm, paladin armor, blah, blah, blah. But anyways, just to, again, reiterate, I think that what's going on is that Paladin Leroy is actually invading where all the occult shit was going down. And maybe he assumed that because you were wandering into the same area, that you were probably going to try to continue their work. And that's the reason why that you were being invaded. If that makes any sense to you whatsoever. I will go more into that later once we actually get down there to it. But Paladin armor. Armor of Leroy, Paladin of the Catacombs. So he is associated specifically with the Catacombs. Not the tombs, but the Catacombs, which is pretty weird. So I guess he went out of his way to try to stop you, whenever you got all the way down to Nito himself. Long ago, the Way of the White produced its first undead. So, it said it produced its first undead, but I guess he used to be part of the Way of the White, and then he died, and then he actually became an undead. And because it is the Way of the White and the Church of Thurland who are very anti-hollowing, it was a great shame to them. You would think that it would be a great shame to them. So you would assume that because of this, they would want to send him away as quickly as possible. With the legendary treasures Grant and Sanctus, Leroy set out for Lordran, Land of the Gods, and the first undead mission of the Way of the White. And remember, like Rhea and all of them, they are sent here to kind of just get rid of them. And the church tries, obviously, to play this off as being a great service to the church. You were made undead, not because you're filthy, because we're the Way of the White. How could anyone have you? How could there be sinners in the Way of the White? No. You have just been blessed with the ability to be undead. So take these magnificent treasures of Grant and Sanctus and go away. Get the fuck out of here. To go on your glorious mission! As they said with a big smile, as a big grin, and just pretended that everything was just fine. And the dark armor, yeah, I haven't done this. Armor of the Dark Race, former Knights of New London who descended into dark. Their armor transformed and remains a symbol of the Dark Servants and their diabolical art of life train. So they used to wear armor, what it looked like, I don't know. But it somehow, in the course of them absorbing humanity, transformed to be more thematic. Yeah, made them more artsy. Yeah. So that's that. Nothing really much to go on there. I guess that's just their way of trying to explain why exactly they were wearing armor that makes them look like skeleton men. So that's that. But we're done here, so let's skedaddle with the help of a homeward bone. And that should take me back to the tomb. And I want to make sure that I have that tagged appropriately. That way I don't have to go through there twice. Yes, okay, good. Don't have to worry about that. Let's go directly into... As long as you can warp to a shrine, but as long as you don't sit down at it, then the homeward bone will take you back to whichever one that you last rested at, not which one that you actually warped to. So we cannot touch that. And since I rolled back, he is still here. And I tried to settle as much as I could before I even bothered trying to speak to him, so... Worry about that in a second. Now, why are we back at Firelink Shrine? Haircut. I need to have a word with you. I've been interested in some miracles. Do you have any miracles for me?
Oh, hello. Miracles, I presume? Yes, I know.
Miracles. You don't seem to have any miracles. Well, if you're not selling miracles...
Come again. The effectiveness of the teachings depend upon your faith.
What use do I have for you? But the effectiveness of the teachings does depend on our faith, and I have a lot of faith. And it is fitting, I guess, that this hammer is imbued with the power of lightning, which is the power of miracles and the power of the gods. And I guess it also is also kind of fitting in a way that I'm associated with Nito at this particular point in time for various reasons. Who, again, as we will go into, what the hell is going on with him having miracles as his thing? But we won't worry about that now, because there are more important things to take care of. Petrus, you got any last words, buddy? Because I did ask you in the last part whether you wanted to deal with him or not, and by an overwhelming margin, you really wanted to see Petrus dead. So, by the will of the people, Petrus, goodbye.
Why? What did I do wrong?
I like how he goes out, and he never even questions that he did anything wrong his entire life. And in retrospect, I probably should have just briefly attacked him, because he does have more lines of dialogue whenever you first attack him. So that was stupid of me. Oh well, haircut is gone. Thank God for that, because I could not stand looking at that ridiculous... And again, that haircut is just supposed to be... It's supposed to be a reference to Japanese nobility, because that's the idiotic-looking haircut that they used to have. Pretty weird for him to have it, though, considering. I guess they also thought, it kind of looks like monks, too, so let's do that. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Anyways. Humanity, as they all drop, for some reason. And that's it. It doesn't drop anything else. I guess at some point in history, I pointed out before, but the armor that actually is completely balanced, but it was never actually added to the game as something you could actually physically pick up, the Elite Cleric armor. This is, I guess, what he normally would have dropped after you got through killing him. But he never drops it. But this is what it says. Armor worn by the warrior clerics of the Way of the White who were famous for being unyielding in battle. Among such armors, those that were black belonged to warrior clerics sent on mission, many of whom were high-level priests. So we can assume that Petrus at one point in time was a high-level priest, a warrior of some class like that. And maybe that's the reason why he detested the upper class, like Rhea and all them. They were not actual clerics. They were just people from the Church of Thurland. So maybe they have some high rank in regards to that. Like the actual people that are actually part of the Way of the White, the actual servants, even if they are high ranking, are looked down upon by little idiots like Rhea. So we have officially rescued Rhea now. And I think most of you actually wanted to see her go hollow. And it was almost evenly divided as far as whether or not we should actually go and kill her in the process as well. So I guess I'm going to go up here and I'll buy her Divine Blessing from her, and that should set her to where she actually leaves and goes hollow. So that will be done, and then we'll go back and handle Nita. And that will be it for this particular episode. Let's see, is there anything else in regards to the notes that I need to handle? I'll deal with that in a second. Hello, Rhea. Anything to say now that Petrus is dead?
I was wondering when you might return. It is a great relief to see you. Now let us speak of miracles.
I do have a warm and caring face, don't I? Alright, I think that she's here as a Covenant Giver, just in case you kill off Petrus, because I think that they were aware that you would have to get rid of one of them. Way of the White doesn't actually have any rewards, though. That's the reason why I never bothered with it. And there's really nothing special about it. I think it's one of those dumb things where it increases the likelihood that if someone that is also part of the Way of the White is part of it, then you get more help. I can't remember. It's such a worthless thing. And she does have just the one, so that's done. I don't think you have to buy a talisman, though. They did that again in Dark Souls 2. They had something that was just like it. And those covenants never work. I don't know why they didn't learn their lesson about that. Covenants that... Because people are going, especially late game, are going to be a part of a covenant that has some use. They're not just going to linger in the Way of the White forever. So why they kept doing it, I have no idea. Anyways, sorry.
Then be safe. Farewell, Warrior Nox.
Fear the dark that you are yourself. Which is kind of what that expression... I did that in the subtitles, one of the previous parts. But that is interesting. Warrior Nox. Oh, if I can remember, I think it literally means fear the dark is how people usually translate it. But if you try to actually use real Latin and try to make sense of it that way, then it kind of has more of an implication of you are the dark, but fear yourself. It's sort of more the way that it's kind of being worded. It doesn't actually say that verbatim or, literally or anything. But that does seem to be the implication, which is a pretty interesting implication. Fear yourself because you have the dark within you. Anyways. She is done, and we don't have any more use for her, aside from maybe visiting her later on to discover how she has hollowed out. She does hollow out. Alright, we're done with that. Let's not even bother. Yeah, I don't need to send that down. So let's just go back to the tomb and we'll finish off the part there. I'm pretty sure I don't need anything else in regards to anything up here. Taking care of all that. Alright. I will point out that, remember that originally, as I discussed in the German spy cast way back in like part 9, I think. But Petrus originally was a quote-unquote damsel in distress. And that you would go down to the fight with Pinwheel. And you would find Petrus kind of strapped to the table there where that skeleton used to be. Or skeleton is now. And, you know, he would have some... This is where that guy is that was following us. But he has some sort of dialogue in regards to, you know, like, please rescue me. And by the way, you can see a little monster guy clipping through the wall here. We'll see him in a second. I think that's how it works. Yeah, I think that's the pet that we're going to use. I think. There's more of them up there. Didn't place them quite as well as they could have. Don't worry about it, though. Don't worry about it. Maybe those are the ones that are in the hole that Fuckface kicked you into. I can't remember. But originally Petrus was going to be strapped to the thing, and he says something to the effect of, I'm going to be experimented on for the sake of necromancy, or something like that. And you rescue him, and he gives you the rite of kindling. Supposedly, and is that thing going to follow me all the way down here? Yeah, there he is. Here he comes! Here he comes! Hope he doesn't knock me off. That would be embarrassing. He waddles his way up here. Kinda cute. I probably shouldn't have used that, but I just wanted to. Anyways. Sorry. But Petrus gave you the rite of kindling originally. So that's the reason why that Pinwheel has it now. Because they wanted to make sure that you got it at that point in the game. And that was just the easiest way to go about dealing. So whenever they got rid of Petrus being rescued like a damsel in distress with his frilly pink dress and whatnot, then they still needed to make sure that you could get it at that point. So that's the reason why Pinwheel has it. It doesn't really have much of a rationalization. So whenever people say that the, you know, they tried to steal Nito's power, people assume because of that, then they're talking about the rite of kindling, as I went over in part 9. That's really not the case. What they were actually after is a bit more ambiguous. The rite is kind of more, sort of unrelated. It's the implication with it seems to be that it was an ancient rite that just so happened to have been interred with one of the dead whenever they were put down here. And they were just looking for it, and, you know, they knew it was, it was probably down here in the first place. So that's that. But as far as that's what I'm thinking of. But as far as the actual thing that the occult were looking for, effigy shield. We found this in the prior part over there. Frightful occult shield defends against blah blah blah, divine weapons or lightning. Remember, Paladin Leroy showed up, and he was trying to defend, or at least hunt down, Agents of Dark. In an ill-fated plot to destroy the very gods, the followers of the cult once attempted to steal the power of Great Lord Nito, the first of the dead. So the cult were down here trying to steal the power of Great Lord Nito. Now, what exactly are the occult associated with? Remember, the occult usually is associated... Of course, Havel was associated with the occult because he was plotting something in regards to trying to fight Seath, but also maybe was associated with the cult. And again, maybe the stuff that we find down there was actually one of the servants or one of the people that are just the underlings of Havel. And Havel himself wasn't actually doing anything. We don't know. Just that's not the point. But the occult was going down because they were trying to plot something against the gods. And the occult, of course, is associated with things like Velka, Kareem, because the people from Kareem do all sorts of the weird experiments and all their, like, rings and stuff, like the Ring of Sacrifice and whatnot are, find one. Sacred, Velka, the goddess of sand, blah, blah, blah. These are things that are made in Kareem. And again, things like that are associated with, like, human sacrifice, because in order to make them, you need that balance or whatever. It's also associated with like basilisks and turning to stone and that sort of curse as well, because like Cursebite Ring, the Cursebite Ring is something that prevents it. So the occult obviously is very interested, in much the same way that Seath is, with these things, the arch trees. This is, by the way, our very first taste of what Ash Lake is going to be. We get down here, and remember I showed you that from the prior part, we looked over to like the left and we could see Izalith, and then we looked over right and we could see a completely different skybox, which is this, which is all the arch trees. So I guess, as far as the model viewer goes, and I guess I'll show this now, but as far as the model viewer goes, if you go into the model viewer, this is a completely different area. And I can't remember off the top of my head what exactly this is. I can't remember. I'll just show it then. But it's a completely unrelated area. I think it might be the Valley of the Drakes. Where it's actually, the model of the Valley of the Drakes is actually intersecting with this area. So this is actually what we would be looking at. So this is one of the few parts where the way that the world actually aligns with itself is completely out of whack. But it's just as far as the actual logic of what you're supposed to be looking at is, we are so far down that the sort of world of men, the Asgardian world that we actually are walking around in most of the time, is up there. And this is the midpoint. And if we kept going down, then we would wind up in Ash Lake, which you can see the water down there, and that's where that would actually be. So we are at sort of the midpoint, and that's where Nito resides. And I guess this may be something that attracted the occult down here, because what the hell are the occult doing? If the occult are associated with cursing and, trying to discover some way of escaping death, because they are associated with sacrifices and whatnot. If they were doing that, then it would make sense that they would try to be after Nito. That they would be after Nito because they were trying to find some way of escaping death entirely. And obviously, undeath has not really worked out for them, so maybe that's what they were doing down here. That maybe whenever they were trying to steal the power of Great Lord Nito, that maybe what was actually going on is that they were trying to figure out some means of, and one of these things does spawn behind you, so you can't really go back either. This is supposed to be one of Miyazaki's clever little traps that he loves doing. He loves those a little bit too much. Kind of gets on my nerves sometimes. Yeah, okay, that does kill him in one hit. That's good. So that's kind of what I assume that the occult are actually after. That they're actually attempting to figure out how to use the power of Great Lord Nito in order to circumvent the laws of death. So they're kind of doing the same thing that Seath is, except sort of in reverse. Whereas Seath is trying to coat himself in whatever is, related to the soul. Whatever kind of that stonification. People ask why I don't say petrification. It's because it implies something different. I just kind of call it stonification, just to make it clear that it's in regards to cursing. That they're doing this in order to... damn it. Well, whatever. I don't care. They do have another guy here. He's there to kick you off the side of the cliff. That's what he's there for. But those guys are kind of distracting me, so I really don't want to have to deal with them right now. And I want to make sure those guys aren't attacking me either, and he's not following me. God damn it. If you're going to follow me, just go ahead. Okay, good. He hinges all the way back there. I can talk. But Seath was trying to discover the secret of immortality by looking into the way that... the baby skeletons. Here they come! He was trying to figure out how to become immortal via the kind of soul aspect of how stone works. Whereas they were doing it in reverse. They were doing it in regards to how sort of the way that flesh works. So maybe that's how Nito's powers work. That he does have... his power of undeath is an extension of the way that stonification works. But it's related to the flesh, whereas sorcery is more related to the soul. And the occult, and we see little clones of Pinwheel down here. So maybe what happened to Pinwheel is something that happened to several people. Or maybe these are extensions of Pinwheel himself, we really don't know. But here we see all these skeletons bowed down, seemingly either in prayer to Nito, or in part to some sort of ritual that was going on. Now, whether the skeletons down here actually belong to Nito, or whether they actually belong to the occult, I don't know. I wanted to bring this up because it is interesting. There's an implication that maybe if the sort of sacrifices and things that were going down here are related to the occult, then maybe the necromancers that control the skeletons up in the catacombs aren't actually linked to Nito at all. Maybe they're actually things that were created via members of the occult, which would be a pretty interesting implication. Or maybe the occult actually is linked with Nito as well. We can't really be too certain. But that is one divide that I wanted to bring up. I don't know really what I believe, actually, in regards to that. I assume... Really, I think it's just a matter of FromSoft not giving this area too much thought, but just trying to drop a couple of things in here to create some degree of mystique. But we see all these little baby skeletons roaming around. The baby skeletons, you might wonder, what the hell are these things doing down here? The easiest explanation would probably be something like, well, you know, they're just the corpses of children. You know, they delivered, like, They delivered, you know, just things down here all the time, just normal corpses. And of those, of course, some of them would, of course, be babies. This thing's reach is terrible. It's more that they're so small that they're kind of hard to hit. That's probably the easiest explanation. Another explanation, the one that I kind of more align with, because it's way more interesting, is that members of the occult down here, members of the Cult of Dark, which Paladin Leroy was hunting, are down here committing some sort of atrocities. They're doing sort of Kareem-based experiments, sacrificing babies and sacrificing even themselves, which may be what these skeletons are. And that's the reason why they aren't moving, is because Nito has no control over them. They're just ordinary dead people. And maybe they were trying to figure out some means, however they went about it, of controlling Nito's power, to steal Nito's power, by committing whatever atrocities and ancient rituals were going on down here. Which does sort of align Velka against Nito in some ways, which is pretty interesting in of itself. So that's sort of my perspective of this entire area. That it's not so much just Nito controls skeletons, so all the skeletons are just Nito, and Pinwheel is Nito stuff. It's more that there was something really bizarre going on in regards to the conspiracy against the gods, and part of that was that the members of the occult that were planning this conspiracy wanted also to circumvent the laws of death, or maybe they were up to something else that we don't know about. And this, what we're seeing, this little area, is part of that elaborate ritual. And that's the reason why Paladin Leroy was out there. Not because he's a servant of Nito, but because he was hunting down these guys. So the servants of the cult are obviously, you know, in regards to this theory anyways, which may or not be true, aligned against the Church of Thurland and the Way of the White. Now I'm going to do a little bit of rushing here to try to clear these guys out as quickly as possible. Because these guys can be pretty dangerous if you leave them around too long. And it takes them a while to drop anything to go through their death animation. So they do drop the masks of the father and child and mother. So if you don't get one from Pinwheel that you want, this is how you get it. Get her, baby. You cute little baby. Okay, Mask of the Mother. I'm pretty sure that's the one that I've already gotten. So I guess off camera I will deal with that later on. Okay, that does have pretty good tracking. I couldn't remember. These little babies do spawn indefinitely. I imagine it's more for the sake of, they drop humanity kind of infrequently, so this is how a lot of people used to farm them. This might actually be the current best way of doing it. I can't really remember what the best way of doing it is now. But you can farm them from rats, you can farm them here. There's one other place I can't remember off the top of my head. I've been doing it with the rats for so long. That this is kind of what I think of in regards to that. And what else is down here? But they do spawn indefinitely. Whether that has something to do with the rites that were going down here, I don't know. It's kind of interesting to think about. That maybe the children that were transformed were actually the only ones that were actually able to have any sort of indefinite immortality, although they did it as mere little bitty skeleton babies. Kind of unfortunate for them. I love how whenever they run through the water, they kick up the little bitty puddles. They're really going, aren't they? They're so adorable. I love these guys. But they're kind of they are kind of annoying though, because they're kind of hard to hit. Let's see. Is there anything down here? I can't remember. Let's go ahead and drop down here. It seems like there is something back here. Yeah, okay. I think it's just the 3 items down here. Yeah, okay, because white titanite slab. This is where you get the white titanite slab. I don't think you get any more aside from this one. White titanite slab for weapon reinforcement. Legendary slabs for the domain of the gods. Reinforces divine weapons to +10. So this is associated with divine weaponry. So that's pretty strange that it's down here. Legendary slabs, blah, 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 nothing, or same thing as all of them are. So the thing that you get for ascending divine weapons, this makes sense from a gameplay perspective because, again, if you're going miracles and faith-based builds, then you're probably going to go down into the tombs right off the bat. So it makes sense for the only legendary slab to actually be down here. I think I might need to that. So that's probably the reason. God damn it, there is one over there. I completely forgot about it. So it makes sense for it to be down here from a gameplay perspective. From a lore perspective, I guess this is kind of whatever, you know. Because why would a divine thing be down here in the first place? I guess maybe because it's the soul of a hero. It didn't. Okay. I guess if you wanted to make something up, why would a divine weapon slab be down here? The cult wouldn't really bring it down here, I guess. Because why would they be worried about divine weapons whenever a cult is the exact opposite of that? I kind of just chalk it up to it's just gameplay. If you can think of some nonsense in regards to it, just blurt it out in the comments below, and no one will care at all. Okay, is there anything else I need to go over in regards to my notes before we do anything? Petra's Savagery Shield, Steel, Immortality, Sacrifices, Vulcan Curses, Mystery, Kismet, Seath, and Skeletons might be a result of the occult. So no, we're pretty much done. Alright, good. I'll go ahead and say in regards to this fight, first off I will point out that I'm still a member of Nito's Covenant here. And unfortunately, Nito is the only Covenant giver that you have to mandatorily kill in order to progress through the game. So, and I guess his is the only Covenant that really works only in New Game Plus. So I guess you can complete one New Game cycle and then just sit on your hands for the rest of the game and just not bother with him. The only, I guess, real difference is that I guess you can't really deal too much with the kiln if you want to use Black Phantoms there. I can't remember. I'll worry about it in a second, but I think you might actually lose the Covenant if you kill Nito. Or maybe not. We'll see in a second. But in regards to this fight, it is useful to have a divine weapon, which I don't have with me, so this is going to be a bit of a problem. Because these skeletons keep respawning over and over again. And this has always been kind of my biggest problem. Or the worst of the boss fights that I go through in regards to all the various lords. Because this is more of a DPS race. It's sort of like the Four Kings. You just kind of have to face-fuck Nito as quickly as you can. And hope that the various skeletons don't kill you. Now, we didn't go through the coffin. And that's the right way to do it. We can't go through the front door. That's unacceptable. So Nito's mad. And he put some sort of polygon thing around his body. And if you have divine weapons, eventually all these skeletons will come chase you. Like right now, you're not aggro to really anything. Oh, he does. Oh, okay. Well, never mind me. Fuck me then. But supposedly you can, anytime he does that scream, then you want to be sure you try to avoid this attack. And let's just try to face fuck him as quickly as possible. I think he's also weak to fire. Let's test that out real fast. This might get me killed, but that's okay. But these, really, it's the various skeletons, the adds, that are the big problem that you have to worry about. Oh, he's gonna do his... No, not this way, that way. There we go. And wow, that hits way harder than I remember. And way further out than I remember. Huh, I don't remember that. What the hell is he... Oh, this is revive. Okay. And I guess the ring that I'm using is marginally useful in this fight, just because so many of these things are going to be dying in the process. Well, it's just about done. I don't think there's really too much to worry about, as long as you have a high enough level. Like I said, this is kind of more of a DPS race. And as long as you have a sufficient amount of poise, then this shouldn't be too bad of a fight. So long, Nito. Nito is actually my favorite of the four lords, but he doesn't have much work put into him. As far as the lore goes, and like his areas, and just in general, he seems to be he generally just seems to be an afterthought. Like he doesn't have his own race necessarily, which is understandable. I agree with that. The finito was never really a thing. I was always disappointed with the lack of effort that Miyazaki put into Nito in his areas. He just shows up briefly in the opening cinematic to supposedly kill the dragons after their stones have been cut off, or broken by Gwen. And then that's all Nito ever does. He doesn't really seem to have much motivation for anything. He just sits down here in his little coffin, and that's all he ever does. But you get one humanity for that, and we'll look at his soul real fast. Soul of Grave Lord Nito, First of the Dead. This Lord Soul was discovered at the dawn of the Age of Fire. By whom we really don't know. Again, whether Nito was actually a person that became dead once they touched it and that made him the First of the Dead, or whether it was actually some sort of, like, it was the last soul that was discovered and things were just dying, and as things died, maybe they accumulated into this thing that we call Nito. I don't know. And it's even weird that he even has a name. You would think that I've been calling her Quela, because, like Gwen, Gwendolyn, Guinevere, and so on, and Quelaag and Quilana, you would think that their mother would be called Quela. You would think that she would have a name, and Nito would be the one that doesn't have a name at all. Because how is a dead skeleton that can't speak or anything going to say, "Hi, I'm Nito"? He's not, so maybe it's an ancient word that used to mean something. Or maybe Nito used to be like a human, and he was just the first one that died. That is sort of an interesting implication with him. Because Nito, either he was a pygmy that picked up the Lord Soul, and then immediately died. Or, if he was the first of the dead, in a more conventional sense, then he would have had to have been either a god, a witch, or a human that died and then was revived as Nito. If that makes any sense to you, which it should. I think I explained it as well as I could. So, he, at some point could have been a human being, for all we know. Or he could have been various human beings. We don't know how this works. Anyways, Gravelord Nito administers the death of all manner of beings. He administers the death of all manner of beings. It's almost like he's in charge of actually causing death in the first place. So if we kill Nito, does that mean that death stops working in the world? I don't think so. So what exactly they mean by he administers the death of all manner of beings, I really don't know. It's not really clear. The power of this soul is so great that it associates Lord Vessel, despite the fact that much of its energy has already been offered to death. So the game is implying that this soul has also been weakened. Which Miyazaki, he does this with everything. Like, everything is faded glory with him. So even with death, I really don't understand his rationale for it. I imagine he kind of just attached this to insinuate that Nito used to be stronger than he is now. To try to explain away why a mere human could kill him or something. But it says that, despite the fact that much of its energy has already been offered to death. So it's like, things are dying because of Nito's soul. And that each time something dies, maybe it's being diminished in some way? Or it could be implying that it's sort of like Gwyn dispersing his own power amongst his children. That maybe Nito, in order to revive skeletons into being his servants, is also distributing his own power. Maybe that is what it's referring to. And here's a bonfire that was not here whenever we came here, but is now here. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Whether this actually used to... This would be a weird place to have a firekeeper, don't you think? This would be a weird place to have a firekeeper. Maybe that's what this coffin over here used to be. Maybe this used to be a coffin for a firekeeper that now is gone. And as I said before, whenever Gwyn rekindled the flame the first time, that would have ended the first age of undead. So all the undead then would have died off, supposedly. So maybe that's what happened. That Nito was hanging out here, and maybe they had some sort of agreement in which a firekeeper is down here basically being an emissary to him. So that people could come here and deliver their dead, and this would be the easiest way to go here or something like that. And that's just what this other coffin used to be. I don't know, that's the most logic I can possibly make out of this. And that's what this LP is just me walking around, stopping and looking at things and trying to talk for an hour, speculating on just trying to make sense of all of this shit. And it is kind of interesting that Nito leaves a little bit, maybe snacks, I don't know, of skeletons down here in the bottom of his coffin. Nito himself is gone forever, though. Let's see if we have our covenant in check. Yeah, we're still part of the covenant. We can't upgrade it anymore, though. So you can destroy Nito without actually breaking your covenant, which I think is... This is the only time in the game you can actually do that. If you attack any of the other covenant leaders, they disperse it entirely. Maybe after I rest or something, it'll... Let's do that real fast. Just to make sure. Absolutely certain. And no, it's still there. Okay, good. Alright, so that's one less worry, I guess. I won't be using it anymore, but, you know, if you wanted to kill off Nito, I guess you can. Just make sure that you upgrade his covenant all the way and you never drop it. Because if you do, you cannot get back into it. And let's, while we're thinking about this, let's look at the 2 miracles that he gives us. Again, the fact that they're miracles is so strange. Because, again, miracles are like scriptures of the gods. So, I don't... are they actually linked to the gods? Maybe I'm being a little bit too literal. Miracle. Maybe it's that just miracles are just scriptures written down, and that's it. They're not necessarily attributed to any one god, so much as once you read them or recite them or however it works, then whoever they happen to be linked to, whether it's Gwendolyn or, you know, Velka or whatever, then it just goes to that particular deity or power. And maybe that's the reason why they're miracles. I don't know. That doesn't really... And the witches, like, the witches were associated with sorcery before they fell, and now they're associated with pyromancy. And pyromancies are actual manipulation of life itself. You're not actually reading off miracles. You're not reading off scriptures in relation to the witches. So maybe that's the reason why those aren't miracles. That is the most sense that I can make out of it. Anyways. Gravelord Sword Dance. Miracle known only by the servants of the first dead. So here it calls him the first dead, not the first of the dead. First of the dead, some people say, is a reference to him being just the first of the dead. He's the chief of the dead. You know, he's their leader, not necessarily the first person that ever died. But here it says the first dead. Maybe it's a typo, I don't know. Maybe I'll have to go into the original Japanese text and translate it that way, as I've done with many other things. And that is such a pain in the ass. Like, Marcus and Franz know how to translate Japanese. I wish I could steal their brains whenever I want stuff like this. Because then I have to message, just wait around, hey, do you know? And then it's like, oh, no. Because they're really not as interested in translating as me. Because they don't love the game as much as I do. Giant Gravelord swords jut out in vicinity. How fascinating. Nito sleeps deep within the giant catacombs, quietly overseeing all death, and waiting for his servants to usher in the Eye of Death. Eh? Eh? So even his motivations in regards to this, really, really ambiguous. It is interesting that they refer to it as the giant catacombs, though. Oh, what I was trying to say, that maybe the giant skeletons are giant skeletons, because, again, remember the Gasha do Kuro, the starving skeletons which are formed from amassed bones of unburied people who died of starvation. That maybe it is referencing that maybe the occult are actually the ones that are making these things, because they're using some sort of right to merge people together. And that's where we get Pinwheel from, because they're a merger of various, like, mother, father, child. And also, maybe that's how we get the giant skeletons, because they were merging people together. Or again, maybe because they're giant skeletons because they've been consuming humanity, which is kind of the same thing. Because you're taking in the souls of other human beings into yourself, and that is making you physically larger, which is what happened to Smough. And probably a few other things that I can't really think of right now. And that's what's causing them to be so large and so powerful. So maybe it's that the cult saw that and went down there looking amongst the giant catacombs because they were curious about the rights of merging people together or something. I don't know. Again, this is to sort of choose your own adventure in regards to trying to make sense of the lore, but that is one thing I wanted to bring up, just that maybe it had something to do with the occult. But since they have gigantic coffins everywhere, even though some of the giant coffins are so fucking huge that they wouldn't be able to hold anything as large as anything that we see in the game. So, I don't know, just make as much sense out of that as you can. But they do seem to be associated with the giants that serve the gods. And maybe that's the reason why that there was a divine slab down there. That maybe one of the ancient giants that were interred actually brought along a slab for divine ascension or something. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Anyways, Gravelord, Great Sword Dance. Kind of the same thing, just more of it. Many have died and many eyes were claimed to realize the Great Sword Dance, a Gravelord ritual known only by his closest servants. Many eyes were claimed. Getting kind of Bloodborne with that description. But again, the eyes, you get the eyes from successful, not invasions, but, afflictions, whatever you want to call them. But you also get them from killing the basilisks. And honestly, getting them from basilisks is way easier. So, I don't know, the eyes, they're not really physical items, I guess, in some ways. They're more associated with just death. Whenever you do something to someone that causes them to die, that is associated with Nito in some ways. Which with the basilisks, it seems to be associated with them cursing people. But with Nito, it's more out of this weird Red Phantom invasion. Like I said, his area, his personality, his character, his covenant does not seem to be really thought out particularly well. I think they just kind of came up with the idea and just shoved Nito into it because, hey, we have this guy, we don't have anything to do with him. I don't know. This is one of the areas of the game I'm just really disappointed with. But anyways, the idea is that the eyes are somehow associated with death for some reason, even though they're just things that are growing on lizards over there. And somehow Nito loves them. He fucking loves these eyes. He loves, I don't know, maybe he eats them like he just pours them like bowls of kicks as he watches skeleton adventures. I don't know what the hell's going on. But anyways, the only other thing to say about these dumb miracles that make no sense at all is that they scale, their damage scales with your covenant rank in the Gravelord's servant covenant. So if you get it to +3, this is the most amount of damage that they can actually do. In regards to how they actually work, I might be able to... I can't remember what their requirements are. I might be able to show them. I can't remember. Hold on. What is the actual... Oh, okay, they don't have any requirements at all, so I should be able to show that off. Well, actually, let's go ahead and do that, actually. While we're thinking about it. You can get off. Get off. Get off. Although, I'm going to have to switch out real fast. And can it... Oh, actually, it only takes one slot. Forgot about that. And I'll have to switch from my fire to... I guess, is this the one that has the lowest? It's been a while since I've done that. Okay. Alright. This is the Grave Lord Sword Dance right here. Nothing special about it. Takes a long time to cast. It's very much like Firestorm. Causes all those little things to erupt. The amount that it consumes whenever you cast it is kind of random. But you should get at least 2 casts out of it. I think you might be able to get 3, but if it does, then the third one is pretty much worthless. And this is the great sword version of it. The little things that erupt out are just bigger, and that's it. It's one of these random sort of Firestorm type skills. Really disappointing that he only gets 2 miracles, or 2 abilities, and then that they're jammed in with being miracles. And in addition to that, they're just the same thing, and plus they're basically nothing but Firestorm. But I guess it is interesting that they don't have any requirements, so I guess as far as lore significance goes, maybe that's kind of interesting? But not really, not really. So that's kind of my perspective of Nito and his entire area, is that it's kind of lacking in lore significance, and at the same time, there's like one thing, the occult thing going on, that makes it seem really, really interesting possibly, but they don't really go into it that much. Because you get the impression that Miyazaki just did not really give a shit about Nito. Which is unfortunate because he's my favorite one. But meanwhile, like Seath, for example, has a whole fucking story almost entirely about him, and how much Miyazaki loves fucking dragons. And like the Duke's Archives is a great area, you know, just as far as the way that it looks, and it's modeled, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot to find. You can spend, hours in that area, whether you want to or not. And it seems like this place and Izalith kind of got especially Izalith got it really bad. Were kind of just the afterthoughts. So you see where most of the effort went into. Dark Souls was an unfinished game in many respects, so it's not too surprising. But anyways, I wanted to point out that I've run out of places to go, aside from Izalith. And like I kind of promised before, I'm thinking about bringing on German Spy and having a little bit of a podcast, probably a big long one for that matter. So I guess look forward to that in the future. But I will see you guys next time.